Welcome to the Awaken on Purpose podcast, where each week I share insight, inspiration, and advice for quantum leaping into new levels of expansion in your purpose and mission as a visionary leader and wayshower. You'll also hear from other new paradigm leaders who share their inspirational stories and wisdom. If you're passionate about embodying your highest destiny and leading others through this great awakening into the next golden age, this show is for you. Hi, everyone. It is my great joy to welcome as a guest to the show today, Helen Denham. She is a mindset mentor, meditation teacher, and singer-songwriter. She is a certified behavioral change specialist, QHHT Facilitator, and Reiki II healer. Helen's mission now is to embolden her community to design the lives they truly desire through mindfulness, energetic healing, behavior change, and subconscious programming. Welcome to the show, Helen.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you for having me. It's good to be.
It's awesome to have you. And I love also that you're a singer-songwriter. It reminds me of someone else I know who also does a lot of work coaching with people, but she, also has a pretty extensive musical background. So I just love how just like all-encompassing your background is. It's just really cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'd love for you to share with us. Actually, let's hear a little bit more about the work that you do with people. Before we hit record, we were talking briefly about QHHT. I know that's, one of the components of the work that you do, but just would love to hear more what you're up to and how you're working with people.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you for asking. So for those of you who haven't heard of QHHT, it's kind of a niche part of the hypnotherapy and hypnosis world. It was a term coined by Dolores Cannon, she passed recently, but such a prophetic kind of person and somebody who was just a big teacher. So I took her program. It stands for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. So it's really a process of journeying back, peeling back the layers of who we are through a subconscious hypnotic journey. And what I always tell people, if they're like, what is going on? Am I going to be out of control? You're always conscious and aware and always fully in control. It's really just a surrendering and an opening to the curiosity of your subconscious. And this technique takes you even deeper into a higher intelligence, to allow that intelligence, that source energy to come through. And we see some pretty amazing things with that. So that's kind of a newer part of my study and what I'm working on right now with people. But that was such a fun training to go through, and it's been a blast, like continuing to explore it. I'm doing it more with my friends and family now as I get the practice in, so I can fully offer it. So it's not really a specific offering right now, but it's something that I completed, and I'm so excited about. It's just fascinating what happens, in the kind of quantum field.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you're also a Reiki healer as well. I saw that too. And tell me more about how you're working with people to design the lives they truly desire. I know you touch in your bio on mindfulness and subconscious programming, which I'm sure is part of what you just shared for us. But tell us a little bit more about that, and then who would be your ideal person that you would typically work with?
Totally. Well, I decided to go to your point of Reiki for a moment to just get as much knowledge and wisdom as I possibly could around energetics and how we're working with the universe at large and how we are creating our realities in so many ways. So it's been a journey of studying science and neuroscience and understanding what makes us tick in psychology, studying a lot of Carl Jung's psychology, and then getting into the more energetic and the subtle body and embodiment work as well. So I wanted to get this kind of full circle understanding of what creates the human experience for us and how we can start to kind of tap into that and essentially hack it so that we can design a life that feels happy and joyful. Honestly, it's so simple for me at the end of the day. My work is to bring women in particular, I work with mostly women, to a place of peace and joy and prosperity and really have them deeply know that that is possible for them, because I've been through that through personal experiences over the last decade, is working on moving through depression, disordered eating, all these things that most of us face to some degree or another, to come out the other side and really be able to create this. I always say this, my favorite affirmation: I live in heaven on earth. And I want everybody who comes to work with me to get themselves to a point where they can really feel that joy of simply being alive, know that that's possible. And, I do always remind people too, it's not me doing the work. It's really just holding the space, the
Yeah.
container for the people who come in. They're doing everything. So sometimes it's so funny. Every client's a little different. So sometimes people really need to just talk. They need to be heard and listened to because they haven't received that, prior. They really need to be able to express how they're feeling verbally. Some people are very quiet and they need me to prompt them with questions and kind of pull out what's going on and get to the root of the issue. Some people need help with organizing their lives, like business wise, like organizing their calendar. It's very like logic minded. Some people are going through like trauma and healing and ancestral wounding. So people come to me basically with an issue. They're like, I need help sorting this out. And we figure out what's at the root of that issue. We pull it up from the root and then we redesign, an ideal day in their life, basically, is where we start from. And then we eventually create that for them.
I love that so much. What was that?
They do it for themselves. Yeah.
No, they totally do. I agree. Yeah. Joy and happiness is our birthright, right? And it's amazing at the amount of inversion or societal and transgenerational programming that's out there. There's just like a lot of unlearning. I've found over the years in my own journey and that of working with clients as well, is that if we're in a place where we're really willing to surrender and let go, those shifts can happen very quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you make such a good point about surrendering. And I think surrendering is also active. So it's like taking the steps forward to design this life and stepping toward your dreams, but ultimately surrendering to what the outcome is going to be and releasing attachment to outcome, I've found has been really profound to see unfold, because it's usually that which causes suffering. It's like this attachment to what it's supposed to look like, or, what it's supposed to be, or, expectations that we have of other people or our environments. And when we let that go and we're just moving forward in alignment and following that joy, like you just said, it really seems to open up this like blossoming of life, in a really beautiful way.
Absolutely.
And, yeah.
And
it's based on,
go ahead.
Sorry, we're having a little lag.
I know, we're having a little delay. Real life. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, at the end of the day, I think the most important point to make is that this is about building self-worth, knowing what you are worthy of and what you're deserving of. So just like you said, that joy is our birthright. That's really the remembering that we are calling in, like remembering your birthright, beyond everything that your parents might have imprinted on you or society has imprinted. Like, who are you really at your core? And that version of you is already whole, worthy, and perfect. So we're not doing any fixing with people. We approach the healing process knowing that you're already perfect, and we're just shedding light on the parts of you that feel ashamed or afraid, and we're bringing that to the light. So that's why, we call it shadow work. We're shining light on the parts of us that we keep hidden. So that's really what we're doing in these sessions.
Yeah, so important, that you bring up shadow work as well. I mean, really what it all comes back to is just us, right? On our own journey, and having the willingness to set aside essentially whatever we've been conditioned to believe or been taught about what's true and isn't true, and tuning in to get clear on what truth feels like for us, right? And when you're clear on that, then everything else falls into place.
Totally. Yeah. What does truth look like for you? And that has so much to do with also getting clear on what we want. And so a lot of the time, what I do with people is I say, what does your ideal day in your life look like? What does a heaven on earth look like for you from start to finish? What does your ideal day look like? That's usually how I start my intro sessions with people. And then we literally work to build that out, and we figure out what's blocking that from being a reality, and we clear it out. So absolutely getting clear on exactly like what your truth is, what you really want out of life, what would feel the best for you, not for somebody else, not for, an expectation of you, what would really make you happy.
Absolutely. Would love to hear more about, what inspired you to this path, because as it's not always like sunshine and rainbows.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I had severe depression from a very young age, like 8 years old. I was put on Zoloft prescription medication. I was on medication throughout high school. And I think looking back on it now is just a perfect part of my journey. I needed to go through that so I could teach it now in many ways. But when I was 16, 17 years old, I ended up quitting cold turkey, getting off those antidepressants because it was just numbing me. Like I have a lot of kind of blank space. I have a lot of memories that just aren't really there because I felt numb. And when I quit that medication, I said, this is going to be rough. We're going to quit. We need to have like tactics in place and practices and rituals in place to help me heal on a holistic and energetic level. Because I didn't want to keep bypassing the pain anymore. I was just like comfortably numb is like the best way to describe it, for like that Pink Floyd song, comfortably numb. So anyways, there was kind of a repercussion from getting off of that medication as I went into college. I hadn't dealt with the deeper layers of what had caused the depression initially, or what had built up over time. So I went through like eating disorders. I was very much in the entertainment world, doing music, a little modeling here and there. And my whole self-worth was based on how I looked, and I could never seem to be thin enough. I could never seem to be booking enough shows or sound good enough, or I just had such harsh expectations for myself, and was completely valuing my worthiness on everything outside of me. And so it was about getting to know people and creating new friends that really were able to bring me out of that and show me a lifestyle that was like completely pulled the blinders off. So I remember having this dear friend, Zach, in college, and he introduced me to some of my first kind of teachers, I guess you would say. Whether it was like Eckhart Tolle or even Teal Swan. I know she's very controversial right now, if you've seen that documentary on Hulu with her. But anyway, she is very, yeah. Well, I was watching her, Brad Yates for tapping, of course, Abraham Hicks, like all the basics that kind of all of us go through in our spiritual initiation, whatever you want to call it. And I had been hearing, my mom had always been into yoga, meditation, had introduced me to some beautiful texts, but I didn't really resonate until I started to dive really deep into these, just new ideas of thinking, like really start to apply those different ideas of thinking and say, okay, so I'm actually in the driver's seat. Like life is not happening to me. Like I'm not a victim of life anymore. I can kind of start to create my own reality. So I started to play with that idea, started to play with what it would look like to start to lead a happier life where I wasn't like, having all these issues with food. I wasn't like binge drinking and smoking and just like so unhealthy, because I was just pressing all of this down. And that I think requires courage, for anybody who's entering this path and starting. You have to be able to look at yourself really honestly and say what's working, what's not working, and have a willingness to change, which is brave, which is courageous. And so yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. It was like over the course of 5 years that I turned my life around. And a lot of that also was solo traveling. So I kind of took inventory at that time. I was like, what's not working? Okay, I don't want to be leading this nightlife kind of lifestyle anymore. Honestly, the music scene wasn't really working for me anymore because I was staying up all night, going to shows, partying until the sun came up, like, rehearsing all week. I was like, I would rather just be a recording artist over a performing artist. So that was the first thing that was very uncomfortable, because all my life I'd wanted to be this like famous pop star. And that peeling back and being like, okay, I'm going to let that go. I don't need to match all of these, things that the magazines push on young women, to aspire to. I'm going to let that go. I also let go of the modeling. I stopped trying to fit into those clothes. I was like, I'll just take my own photos if I want beautiful photos. I'll team up with people that I love, but I'm not gonna shrink anymore to fit this industry standard. So I let that go. Then I decided, if I really want to be a student of meditation, I need to start working at a meditation studio. So I started to work with Inscape Meditation Studio, which unfortunately closed, but they were so cool, in the Flatiron District in New York City. Worked with them for a little while. And around that same time, I was also taking solo trips. So I lived in Thailand for a couple months. And there was just a capsule of time where I just made a huge shift in life to move toward mindfulness and compassion for myself and just turning that inward. I did a lot of just pilgrimages internally and externally. I did solo travel, which if you've done solo travel, it's really a journey inward at the same time. So that's the long-winded version of kind of how I came into this work. And I really think the key here was also following my curiosity. And so I always say that to people who are like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. I'm like, follow your curiosity. What would you love to learn about? If you were to go pick up a book or something, or you were to watch a documentary, what would you be consuming? What would you be really curious about? And this has always sparked my curiosity, and my, intention is to always be a student of life in every way. I never want to get to the point, which is why this teal swan thing is so controversial, of being this all-knowing person, so kind of being humbled by the experience of just being a human, constantly evolving, constantly learning. So there's still layers that I'm peeling back. And yeah, that's where I am now. I've just continued to follow my curiosity.
Cool. Yeah, I personally haven't watched the Teal Swan documentary. I have.
You might be interested in it. Who knows?
Yeah. I have mixed feelings about some of that stuff. But
Yeah.
anyway, I love that you bring up curiosity as well. I mean, we just live in a distraction culture, right? And up to this point, what largely has been a culture of conformity as well. I mean, publics everywhere you look, right? Western medicine, public school systems, everything teaches us to believe, conditions us to believe that we need to have this herd mentality. But really, each and every one of us, the billions of us, is unique. And so, obviously the first step there is developing that self-awareness of, wow, like I'm different, and that's a great thing. And like you said, getting curious about what your own values are, and what you're feeling drawn to do. And I mean, it's always been an important conversation to have, but especially in the time that we're living in now as a collective, where we're shifting into this new paradigm. And the way of the new paradigm is individuality, in terms of it's individuality, but collaboration as well, right? It's like showing up as who you are individually, but collaborating with others too.
Yeah.
So it's important to question all of what has been those societal norms up to this point in pretty much every facet, whether it's personal development and business too, because what you're hearing in terms of noise about what works out there might not work for you.
100%. And I think this is what you're referring to too. I pull this oracle card a lot recently. It's the crumbling. It's the crumbling of old paradigms.
Like the tower.
What is falling? Right. It's like the tower. Yeah. It's like this crumbling of old paradigms. And I was just on a walk with my mom this morning. We were talking about just this, how I think we all noticed that there was a huge shift in the workforce and how we all work. With the pandemic, and the sense of freedom, like, okay, there is actually an option now to kind of work from anywhere. If you want to create that life for yourself, you absolutely can. A lot of people are creating these kind of capsule pop-up communities. Like I see Austin, Texas is one of these ones right now. It's just, they're communities that are kind of not off the grid, but creating new ways of being, new education systems for the kids, new systems of medicine. Things are changing. Things are really changing. Even, if we're talking about, the entertainment industry and modeling and everything, there's been a huge shift in how women are represented in media over the last 10 years. So there's just so much. And I wanted to quickly bring up this metaphor that I just love. I found it yesterday. I think it was a talk actually, and I wish I could give this creator credit, but he was giving this example of these two grasshoppers. So a child, captures these two grasshoppers in a jar and closes the jar. And as the jar closes, the grasshoppers, there are two of them, they're jumping, they're trying to get out of the jar. Finally, they get tired and they realize they're not getting out of the jar. So they just sit. They're just, that's their existence now. They're not jumping anymore. Then the grasshoppers have a baby, and the baby grasshopper never learns to jump, never sees the parent grasshoppers jump. So its belief is that, oh, life is inside of this jar. Doesn't even try to jump, doesn't even realize there's a world outside of the jar. It was born into it. And the parents, were showing that that is what life is. So it's such a great metaphor for considering, like, what is our glass jar? What have we been taught that we hold to be absolutely true? What if we were to break off that glass ceiling? What if we were to break out of our own version of a jar, and open ourselves up to a world that is so much better than we could possibly even imagine? And that's where having examples of people who are doing what we really aspire to be doing are so helpful. Mentors are so helpful. It's why I have never regretted investing in a mentor in my life, because they're the people who show me what's possible and help me to break through the next glass ceiling. So I just love that. And I think about that a lot, today is what jars are we keeping ourselves in as individuals and as a society? Like, what don't we like? What's not working? And we've seen that we can affect change as a collective when we don't agree with something anymore.
Absolutely. And I feel the same as you do in terms of the value of investing in a mentor. I mean, the reality is we only know what we know, right? And even, I'm sure you have emotional attachments. I have emotional attachments. No matter how seasoned you are or how long you've been at this journey, I think you referenced this earlier in the conversation, we're all students of life. I often say we're eternal students, right? So as you continue to expand on your path, there are just new invitations to mastery. I love that so much. I'm curious, how has your desire for, or your love for music, shifted as you've embarked on this journey of mentoring other people in the work that you do?
Oh, I love that question. Well, somebody was like, well, how do you marry all of what you're doing, like podcast, music, mentorship, web design? Sometimes I love creating content.
Yeah.
And when I think about it, it's all interconnected. Music specifically for me is a form of catharsis and an extension of writing, because I think writing can be extremely cathartic. To journal, I mean, it all started with journaling. It's like getting your feelings down on paper in a tangible form. That turned into writing songs and putting that into more of a formalized version. And then that came in with the healing modality that music really is, and understanding, how those acoustic guitar strings could literally change something internally within me. And I think we all know that feeling of having music shift us on like a cellular level, creating memories with music. So music to me is one and the same with all of this healing work that I do. So I usually end up writing music when I come home, actually now. So I'm in Maine, at this time when we're recording in July. And I always kind of write for the months in between, and then I meet with my buddy and producer here, and we kind of put together our ideas, and I'll have played with a few ideas in the interim. But yeah, it's like, it's a marriage to me between sitting down and actually doing it and letting it come in organically, because I've had my most recent release, Sanctuary, was literally stream of consciousness. I wrote it for the partner I was with at the time, and it was such a beautiful moment. He was painting this like gorgeous like oil canvas. He was a painter, and I was sitting with him, and I just was like so in awe of him, and I felt so safe with him. One of the first partnerships that had really showed me what love was really like and how I deserved to feel. And I wrote it as a love song to him. He didn't even really know it. He didn't know what I was writing, but that it was such an authentic expression of love for him and life and the feeling of a sanctuary in another person. And that came through. I wrote that song in like 30 minutes. And then there are other songs that take a while as I'm processing emotions. So music and writing for me is a form of processing emotions that happen either quickly, or they might take me years to write a song. I still have a couple that I'd like to release that I wrote 5 years ago that I think would still be relevant. So that's what music
so
is.
Much. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. In closing, what else are you feeling guided to bring forward?
Oh, I will shout out my podcast too. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share with you and speak with you. I think for anybody listening, if you want to hear more of these conversations, there are just so many wonderful guests that I've had on the Lifted podcast. And we're just exploring these themes of what it means to be human, what we're navigating, tools for healing, and just exploration of self and self-mastery and storytelling. I love hearing people's stories. I love hearing what makes people tick and why they are the way that they are. So that's what's going on over there. And then otherwise, I have a mentorship program that's ongoing. It's a one-on-one private mentorship series with me. So everything's on my website, helendenham.com. So
well, you answered my next question, which was going to be, where is the best place for someone to reach out to you if they want to connect deeper?
Exactly.
So
website, helendenham.com. I've got blog posts there, links to work with me. You can also book a free clarity call with me too. That's like a 30-minute power session. So we can just get to know each other and all of that. And then I'm on Instagram all day, every day. I love Instagram. I love TikTok. So I'm always there to connect and communicate with everybody. So that's me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the show today and for sharing your heart and just for all that you're doing to, raise the consciousness of the planet. Super appreciated.
Thank you, Jennifer. And thank you as well for holding the space for people to come on and share and just continuing this conversation as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Talk to you later. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Awaken on Purpose podcast. Please visit me and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or at awakenonpurpose.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about how you can embody new levels of expansion in your purpose and mission as a visionary leader and way shower, visit me at jenniferspore.com.